Battle cries echoed across the field. A skirmish had broken out as a pair of warring clans were attempting to finally become the dominant force in the region. They had been on equal footing for the longest time, and this may have been another stalemate. However, one of the clans had recently spoken with one of the most ominous mercenary clans in the far north, asking for their support. They promised they'd help, but instead of sending supplies or soldiers, they provided only one axe-wielding fighter, stating that they would be enough. True to their word, this fighter was holding their own during the skirmish better than most of the clan. However, even they began to get overrun as they began to face multiple opponents. As this lone mercenary began to get overwhelmed, the clan leader was prepared to call for a tactical retreat. But it was at this moment that an ear-splitting roar filled the battlefield. The lone fighter was still standing tall, weapon held confidently as their opponents looked shocked. Just then, they raised their axe and with one massive blow struck the ground. The earth trembled and cracked, rending the terrain before them and sending their opponents flying. Everyone from both clans were shook by this display, as this lone tribesman bared their weapon and rushed into the opposing clan's forces, alone. With eyes burning red, they charged the enemy clan, eager to continue this battle. And despite having what should have been every advantage, the enemy were the ones that were now terrified. Good day, my friends! I hope you're well. For this lesson, we'll be moving our gaze onto a profession that is both intimidating and well respected. While most might call the practitioners of this art barbaric and basic, it's a fighting style that speaks to something instinctive and primal within each of us. It will draw upon the most violent aspects of yourself to overwhelm your opponents like an unstoppable force. But if you're not careful, it can overtake you instead. So let us come together this day and discuss the time-honored traditions of Eorzea's most dangerous clan. Today, let us discuss what it means to be a warrior. The true history of the warrior is surprisingly obscure. I've no record stating who started this practice or when, and I'm starting to suspect that such records might not even exist. However, what we do know is that the profession dates back to times before the 11th century of the Sixth Astral Era. So even at its youngest age, this profession is somewhere around 600 years old. This means that they predate the creation of city-states like Gridania and Alamigo, just to give you some context. But they could be even older than that, since one of their oldest records is written in Old Rogadin by a seemingly ancient source. What we do know is where they come from and how they left their mark on Eorzean history. From what we understand, they've mostly operated out of Abalathia's Spine in northern Eorzea. We know they lived there because of all the accounts of people seeking them out to be used as mercenaries during the years of strife in the Sixth Astral Era. This was a time when the new city-states of Eorzea were almost always in some form of conflict, as they grew into their new roles and began establishing their borders with one another. The warriors of the far north were already well known for how powerful and ruthless they were on the battlefield, and were often hired as mercenaries and freelance fighters by Eorzea's budding nations. That being said, the more the warriors were present on the battlefield, the more of a sinister reputation they started to gain. You see, many warriors single-handedly won entire battles for the side they were fighting on, performing feats of amazing strength and unstoppable ferocity. But it was that same ferocity that started to paint them as mad berserkers frothing at the mouth like a wild animal. I found some stories about them butchering their fellow fighters long after the enemy was bloodied and beaten, just to satisfy their bloodlust. Whether these stories are true or not is pure speculation, as I never found any names or dates to reinforce them. Regardless, Eorzea's warriors were feared more and more with every battle they took place in. Once the years of strife were over and the city-states began to move towards the peaceful cooperation we're familiar with, the need for warriors began to disappear. But despite how unbelievably effective they were, they gained a horrible stigma. No one would hire them, and the stories told about them were so negative that they were steadily shunned by most of Eorzea's citizenry. With no one to call friend and no coin to be made, the warriors went back up north into Eorzea's mountains. By all accounts I could find, the last remaining warrior clan is made up of Hellsguard Rogadin and still exists somewhere in the most northern half of Abelathia's spine. Their brutal style of combat steadily being forgotten by the entire continent of Aldonard and the world at large. But that seems to be changing, as some warriors of that northern clan have begun to travel south and throughout Eorzea. The art may yet make a comeback, and this time, it should be given the respect it deserves. But what about the warrior inspired so much fear and contempt in the first place? To truly understand that, we must now go over their powers and abilities. The most common skill one hears between all warriors is the use of one's inner beast. The inner beast is cited as being the true well of strength behind a warrior's ruthless and brutal fighting style. But what is it? To put it simply, it is one's truest fighting instinct. The inner beast is something old and primal that speaks to us on a fundamental level. Whenever something is harmed, and it irrationally strikes back just to cause more pain, that is the inner beast, but only a glimpse of it. It is the raw desire to overwhelm and decimate your opponents just to ensure you would be the only one left standing. It is the fight-or-flight instinct if flight didn't exist. It is the bloodlust that encourages you to continue fighting even after you've won. The inner beast is a monster that sleeps in almost all living things that have ever had to fight for their survival. Most people can go their entire life never tapping into or even getting a glimpse at this power, but it's still there, waiting for you to choose violence above all else. By intentionally tapping into the inner beast and drawing upon that primal savagery, the warrior's body is stimulated beyond normal limits. They gain the strength of multiple soldiers, shocking levels of resilience, and even the pain they endure throughout a fight no longer hampers or slows them down. This is what scared so many people on the battlefield. No matter what stood in their way, a trained warrior was slamming and crushing whatever stood in their path, always marching towards their target in spite of the things happening to them. The idea of this unstoppable force instilled fear in the hearts of those who weren't even on the receiving end of it. But while the use of one's inner beast does make them incredibly powerful, it can be very dangerous when not properly trained. Like stated before, the inner beast is raw combat instinct. It doesn't care who or what gets in its way. So, if someone tapping into the inner beast were to lose control, that savagery is now unchained and prepared to attack everything around it. This may or may not have happened during the years of strife. An inexperienced warrior may have gone on a rampage after losing control, harming their employers long after their foes were beaten. Only the warriors in the northern mountains of Eorzea have trained vigorously to tap into and tame their inner beast, producing some of the most dangerous melee fighters in the world. But just because warriors have trained to control their inner beast doesn't mean others around the world haven't awoken to or tapped into it. Historically, anyone bearing the title of a berserker was likely tapping into the inner beast whether they know it or not. There are even records of Zala tribes on the Azim Steppe unintentionally tapping into the inner beast through rigorous training. But when compared to Eorzea's warriors, these Zala lack discipline and restraint, becoming little more than blood-hungry barbarians. This proves that the warrior doctrine is about more than simply using their inner beast. The strongest warriors are able to tap into this power, but also maintain their mental clarity, remaining lucid and focused. But the strength of a warrior doesn't stop there. Against a true warrior, a home field advantage means very little. By using their inner beast, they have the strength to shatter shields, break armor, rend stone, and even crack the very earth beneath one's feet. The debris and force created from the swings of a warrior's weapon will hit just as hard as the weapon itself, turning the very land against their opponents. And by letting the thrill of battle stimulate themselves, they're typically able to fight at full strength long after their foes have already become exhausted. Now that we've covered their history and the nature of their strength, let us move on to their choice of weapons and attire. It likely comes as no surprise to anyone that two-handed axes have been a staple weapon type for much longer than warriors have existed. They were, of course, used as a means of harvesting things like wood and shaping it into whatever was necessary during the early days in the first astral era. Many axe blades were even designed with tilling the earth and rending stone in mind. But like most tools, it became an equally formidable weapon. Even though battle axes didn't see great use until the discovery of bronze, they swiftly became a favorite weapon of those with the strength of arms to really show off how powerful of an armament it could be. But an axe is still a tool by nature, so it's still often used for harvesting and shaping resources. A more creative use that axes have seen in recent times is how the pirates of Limsa would use the pointed ends of their axe blades to help scale the sides of enemy ships. By using their axes, they'd climb up the side only to jump onto the deck and surprise their opponents with axe in hand. Two-handed axes became the favored weapon of warriors due to their training allowing them to swing even the heaviest axes with ease. With all that weight and momentum behind their attacks, very few things could withstand a warrior's assault. Next up, we'll discuss their choice of armor. Warrior armor is surprisingly detailed and does more for the wearer than meets the eye. Traditionally, all warrior armor is designed with the taming of one's inner beast in mind, which goes a long way to helping warriors maintain their composure whilst devastating the battlefield. The armor helps with this in a variety of ways. The most common are enchantments. There's a technique that uses blood to create a seal on the inside of the armor. This enchantment is made to keep the inner beast in perpetual check, but how this enchanted blood seal is made is only known by the shamans of the warrior clan. Not only that, but materials used to construct the armor are made in specific ways and follow a strict tradition the warrior clan follows. The metal of a warrior's armor is made from meteoric iron that is forged over lava. Both the iron and lava are seen as the lifeblood of the world, meaning that to wear it is to fill the bearer with the greatest vitality and bring them closer to the indomitable land. Meanwhile, the pelts, leather, and sometimes scales that are used to make the armor come from only the most savage of monsters. The pelts symbolize that they respect the lives of those a warrior takes. Meanwhile, any leathers or adornments from monsters are made part of the armor to help agitate and encourage the inner beast to bear its full power. To wear a warrior's armor is to be closer to the northern clan than anyone else. And that will bring us to the end of our lesson. Now you understand the warrior's mysterious yet awe-inspiring history, how the control of their inner beast grants them tremendous power, and how time-honored their weapons and armor truly are. While an untrained warrior can be dangerous, never fail to show respect to those who have mastered their inner beast. They might very well break apart foes that you yourself could not. To those that walk the path of the warrior, hear me now. Taming your inner beast is no easy feat, and you must always remain vigilant. However, you wear and carry the timeless traditions of an ageless clan that even nations are fearful of angering. Bear your weapon with pride and remind your foes what it means to make an enemy of someone who fights fully grown behemoths for practice. Hello everyone! Thanks for staying to the end of the lesson. If you enjoyed this and want to see more, subscribe and like this video to let me know I'm doing well. If there is a topic you'd want me to cover in the future, leave a comment about it and I'll see what I can do. Until next we meet, I'll be researching even more of our world's rich lore to share with you. Till then, stay safe, my friends.